Okay, I will record this lecture for the benefit of those who cannot attend it online. Yeah, so that you can also download it or you can play it when you feel that you need to follow my lecture again. But if there are one of you who can help me to record and upload in YouTube, yeah, then I can link that YouTube to ELIP. It'll be much better. Yeah. So if any one of you who can record and upload it in YouTube, please do so. Yeah, for the benefit of our friends and your classmate that not be able to attend this class this afternoon. Start now. Yeah, you can take your attendance again later at the end of the class. I will give lecture until 1 o'clock. Yeah, from there um, you can take your attendance again. Yeah. So I go to Philip now. Um, okay, last Friday we stopped at risk management. Yeah, we look at the risk introductions, and for today we look into the risk framework. Yeah, and as I did mention last week, risk is actually play a very important role when a company want to come up with their strategic planning as well as in a decisions making process. Yeah? Okay, can you see my slides on Unit 1, Understanding Risk Management? Can you see the slide?
Belum lagi, Bro.
Cannot. Okay, that means I need to share this one, right? Share. Okay, now you can see. Okay, understanding risk management. Yeah, so just quickly um, review back what we have covered last Friday. Yeah, so we looked into introductions to risk management last Friday, and we stopped there. And for today, we will continue with risk strategies. If just we quickly go through what it actually means with risk management. Yeah, so what is risk management? So we have covered last Friday. What is actually risk? Yeah, whether it's risk actually good or bad. Yeah, and it's good, what we're supposed to do, and if it's bad, what we need to do, for example, right? For examples, business uh, risk to venture into a new business, that probably considered as a good risk. Yeah. um, your factory subject to fire, that's probably a bad risk. Yeah. So for a fire, for example, what you can do about it if you are the owner of the factory? One way is actually preparing your staff how to handle fire, for example, if it happen. Yeah, or if that fire happen, if you already bought a fire insurance, probably you can rebuild your factory faster with the money from insurance company, for example. Yeah, so this is what we can do about the risk of fire to our property. Yeah. With regards to business, for example, if we know that that business opportunity is a probably a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yeah. So in this case, probably you need by knowing that there are risks behind any business. Yeah. Probably you can make a more detailed analysis so that you can consider your decisions based on calculated risk in this case. Yeah. So there is for good risk, you can actually uh, be prepared on whether you want to take the risk or not. Yeah. So risk is basically the combinations or the probability of an event and its consequence. Yeah. And consequences can range from positive to negative, as we just discussed just now. And the risk can be divided into either hazard or pure risk. Yeah. Which normally the outcome will be negative. For example, harm that led to harm, death, or even a loss, for example. Then we have also control risk, which is the uncertainty risk. Yeah. And this is normally associated with unknown and unexpected events, for example, in project management. And finally, the third type of risk is actually the opportunity or speculative risk. This is normally to do with in a business, in an investment, etc. Yeah. So the risk is also classified based on the time frame. We have long term, medium term, and short term risk, for example. Long term normally in 5 years, and that requires strategic in nature. So we learned last week on Monday in regards to decisions making and strategic planning. Yeah, and we have come across quite number of times risk being discussed in that lecture when we're talking about strategic planning and also decision making. Yeah, so when talking about long-term risk, is in fact strategic in nature. Yeah, whereas for medium-term risk, normally within 1 year, this actually we need to make a decisions. The management need to make a decisions actually to minimize the disruptions, as well as a short-term risk, which can happen anytime. So in this case, the decisions making try to identify them and manage them. Yeah. So risk management is a process whereby organizations methodically identify and address the uncertainties attaching to their activities with the goal of optimizing the risk or reward relationships within each activity and process and across the portfolio of activities in aggregate. Yeah. So risk management is about being aware of the risks that have an impact on an individual or an entity and deal with the risk accordingly depending on the situation, resources, and preference. And it's still very much a developing field. Yeah? So I do expect that when you graduated later on, yeah, uh, one of the first thing that probably the manage your employer asks you to do actually to analyze risks, for example. Yeah, and then at the time probably they will ask you to use a lot a software. Yeah, which is being developed for you for the company to predict or to mitigate the risks associated with the company's business. Yeah? So it is still a developing field in this case. Yeah. So in a good risk management, basically, that you be able to identify and treat the risk. Yeah. So the objective of risk management is actually to add value. Yeah. For example, you know what is the good business, what is a good risk, and what is bad risk. For example, yeah. So this is add value rather than a hindrance to business. So there are diploma on risk management, the history of diploma on risk management until now, where in any public listed company there must be a chief risk officer, yeah, for any public listing. So why is risk management important? So we have looked into every point there from resources allocations all the way to achieve goals, yeah, and also uh, the risk management also will help us to be more efficient, for example, and as well as effective. Yeah, as already described by the Petronas Secretary Srembahat CEO during his talk last Thursday. If you attend or listen to the talk. Yeah? So the principle of risk management is also based on 5 principles. There is proportionate, aligned, comprehensive, embedded, and dynamic. And the objective of risk management based on CADE, there is a C for compliance with law and regulations, A for assurance, the management of significant risk, D for decisions, and E is the efficiency and effectiveness in operations of projects. Yeah. So this not actually MBA notes. Yeah, for MBA course in risk and crisis management. Yeah. So you can see that in engineering management, we're talking about risk. This is a common point that the management need to consider when they deal with or they try to handle risk, to manage risk. So, what is risk management in regards to management framework? Yeah, which is actually a guidance to adopt a holistic approach to managing risk. Yeah. So the application of the framework will enable employees and organizations to better understand the nature of risk and to manage it more systematically. Yeah. And for risk management standard, it's actually an overall approach to risk management, including framework and details of the risk management process. So in summary, risk management standard is the sum of risk management framework and process descriptions. So there are many types of risk management standards, from the ISO 31000 to British Standard 31100 to the Institute of Risk Management IRM, COSO, COCO, and Turnbull Report in 1919. Yeah. So the latest one that we have is so far is the ISO 31000. Yeah. And this is the flowchart of the ISO 31000 in regard to risk management. So first of all, we need to establish the context of the risk, then risk assessment in the form of risk identifications, risk analysis, risk evaluation, and risk treatment. And during the time also there will be a process of monitoring and review, as well as communication and consultations between all the people involved. So this is British standard in a cycle. The same thing like the ISO 31000. Yeah. IRM also similar to ISO 31000. Yeah. And COSO in 3D and COCO in similar to British standard. So that's the introduction to risk management. So now we continue with risk strategies. Yeah. So I will talk about risk strategies until 1 o'clock before we call it a day, and we can continue again on Friday with Unit 2. This is Unit 1, which cover risk introductions to risk management and risk strategies. Yeah. So one. Now we discuss into detail what are the risk strategies. Yeah. So for risk strategies, yeah, we need to look into the risk management policy of the company. Yeah. What is their risk management policy? For example, if you are in Unimas, for example, or in higher education, which is Unimas is actually a public university um, involved in higher education. Yeah. So their management policy will be the risk management policy, probably something that to do with education. Yeah. They are not really think about how to um, talking about risk in venturing into a commercial business. Yeah. So they are mostly to do with education. Yeah. And then for her, that they need to have the management documentation. They need to document it, and then they need to assign the responsibility of risk management, and then they must have the risk architecture and structure. So this risk architecture and structure will be similar to the framework that we mentioned just now. Yeah, it's mostly with ISO 31000, and then they're also about risk-aware culture. Yeah, to make people aware about the presence of risk, for example. Yeah, if you tackle it properly, yeah, you handle it properly, probably you're more ready. You become more efficient and effective, for example. But if you are not aware about risk, for example, you can see that in any organizations, when people are not really aware about risk, for example, you can see a lot of inefficiency, ineffectiveness in decision making, inefficiency of resources, utilizing resources in the organizations. That include probably wasting time wasting, or including also corruption, for example, bribery, for example, yeah, etc. And in order for to make people more aware about risk management, and also how to delegate the order from top, from board of directors all the way to office boy, for example, in any organizations, you must have training and communications with regards to risk management. Yeah? So this is the 6 strategies in risk management. Yeah. So we look into more detail one by one. First of all, about risk management policy. Yeah. So in a risk management policy, there are two critical components. First, actually, the risk management framework, and the second is the risk management process. Yeah. The risk management process, actually, we are looking to the risk architecture, which defines the roles, responsibilities, communications, and reporting structure, yeah, of risk management in that particular organizations. Yeah. So the risk strategy will include risk appetite, attitude, and philosophy. Yeah. And the risk protocols define the standards, rules, procedure, and techniques. Yeah. So we have a risk architecture, which defines the role, responsibility, communications, and the reporting structure for that particular organizations. And then the strategy, a risk strategy will include the risk appetite. Yeah. So if you are in a university like Unimas, probably the top management will not thinking about venturing into a commercial business, for example. Yeah. Or maybe they have tried to limit the exposure in that kind of things. Yeah. Or invest the university money in a share market, probably. Yeah. That's not the thing that they're supposed to do. Yeah. So whatever uh, risk appetite for that particular organizations normally will tell you with um, uh, their responsibility to the shareholder or the stakeholder in this case. Yeah. So the risk strategy will include the risk appetite as well as the attitude and philosophy of that particular business in this case. Yeah. And the risk protocols normally define the standards, rules, procedure, and techniques. Yeah. What are standards you're using? ISO 31000. Yeah. What are the rules? Yeah. Talking about them based on Basel's 2 rule, for example, in the banking industry. Yeah. What's the procedure and techniques? It's all being considered. Yeah. Now we look into the risk management documentations. It's important as a documentation is important because for any updated documents, it will help the management in terms of risk management administrations, as well as a risk response and improvement plans, and even reports and recommendations, as well as risk performance and certifications reports. Yeah. So this is why risk management documentation is important. Yeah. So we need to have how to how to administrate the document, for example, how to come up with a response and how to improve the plan, for example. Yeah. And the last point in regard to certifications report, for example, if you are based on ISO, for example, then you can make sure that your process based on that ISO 31000, for example. Yeah. And ISO probably come to your organizations and audit you. Yeah. If they find out that your organization is following the standard accordingly, then they issue these certifications. Yeah. That say that you are indeed following the procedure stated in that particular standard. Yeah. The risk action plan of the organization drive management actions also been listed down in this management risk management documentation. Yeah. So normally, a risk register should be a record of all the significant risks identified in the organizations and be a record of the control activities undertaken to date. Yeah. And it also be a record of additional actions proposed to improve and control a particular risk. Now we look into what actually means with risk management responsibility. Um, in summary, yeah, the main point is actually the risk management responsibility is everyone's responsibility. Yeah, from the CEO or from the chairman and the board director to the CEO, deputy CEO, all the way to the office boy. Yeah, so they have the responsibility. As an office boy, for example, you are responsible to deliver a letter from one point to another point, for example. Yeah, for example, from the engineering faculty to the finance office, for example. Yeah, um, then you have that responsibility to deliver that letter as expected. Yeah, or based on the trust given to you in this case. Yeah, or in the Malay they say amanah. Yeah. Although now probably we can reduce that risk of that letter not being delivered by using electronic mail, for example, yeah, or email, or even you can scan the letter and email it to the other party, and then when they receive it, if they think they need to print it, they can print it. Yeah. So in this case, the roles of all parties to be clearly defined and understood. Yeah, from the internal audit to risk manager to staff, even to the contractors, and even to the subcontractors, even, yeah, suppliers, etc. Yeah. So the risk register should record ownership of each priority significant risk, yeah, and also the ownership of each core process. Yeah. So the managers must ensure that ownership of risk includes all staff and is not the sole responsibility of specialist risk management practitioners and internal audit. So we look into some of the parties involved in the process. First, we have the board of directors, yeah, and then we have under the board of directors, we have board risk management committee. Then we have the audit committee, followed with the chief executive officer (CEO), and then in any public listed company, they have the chief risk officer (CRO), and then we have the internal and external auditors, yeah, and then we have the specialist risk management functions, yeah, and then as we mentioned earlier, everyone's responsibility. Then we're talking about the individual employees, all the way from CEO all the way to the office boy in this case. Yeah? So we look into what actually means with risk architecture and structure. So a structure needs to be put in place, especially for strengthening governance and oversight in the organizations. So there are various committees such as the audit committee, board risk committee, etc. That to have a clear and complete terms of reference or TOR, yeah, for their particular committee. Yeah. And the committee can be different depending on the organizations itself. Yeah. So if in Unimas, which is deal with education, for example, yeah, we still have our HRM, finance office. Then we have the faculty, uh, uh, faculty as a unit, the particular structure. Yeah. So they will have their own risk management as well. Yeah. But if you are in a manufacturing company like Proton, then we have a different um, terms of reference. So with regards to purchasing department, for example, manufacturing department, R&D departments, etc. Yeah, and then the memberships of committees should be sufficiently reflecting the committee's independence. Yeah, and communications on risk matters also should be based on the risk architecture. Yeah? That's why we want to come up with the framework because we need to differentiate. Yeah, um, that one committee to another in this risk architecture they are independent of from one to another. For example, if you start from the audit committee, for example, by right, the audit committee will report direct to the board of directors instead of the CEO, for example, because the auditor normally audit the CEO. How come that the auditor will report back to CEO, for example? So in this case, they will report. They can report straight to the board of directors in this case. Now we move into risk-aware culture. What it means with risk-aware culture? So the culture of an organization is a reflection of the overall attitude of every component of management within the organizations. So a good risk culture will lead to commitment to risk management objectives of the organizations. And a risk-aware culture will result in open communications and mutual trust and sharing of confidence and perceptions of the importance of risk management and a commitment to adhering to risk control procedures. Yeah. So people know their roles in that um, in the organizations where they work in. Yeah. And this will include as you learn in engineering ethics, for example, with regards to whistleblower, the issue of whistleblower, for example. Yeah, this is part of the risk-aware culture here. Yeah, and in any way, with regards to risk-aware culture, there are some components which are necessary to create the risk-aware culture. Yeah. For example, if you find out something wrong with the leadership, for example, you have the mean to report um, the wrongdoing um, to other to higher level, for example, or to parties to other parties that probably responsible to prevent it from happening further, like MACC, for example, in case of corruptions in Malaysia, for example. Yeah. So the components involved are actually the leaderships. Yeah. So you have a strong leader. Um, Normally, the employees will think twice to do something wrong, for example. Yeah. Or they will work very hard to achieve the company's objective, targets, etc. Yeah. So leadership is important. Yeah. That's why we start our lecture. When I start my lecture with you, we're talking about leaderships. Yeah. So leadership is always important in this case. Next, the involvement on the management, also the employees. Yeah. The third one is learning. Yeah. How they learn about risk, for example. Yeah. The risk culture, how they can be more alert, for example. The fourth one is actually the accountability. Yeah. So as an employee, for example, you are accounted, you are um, held responsible or accountability for your work, for example, yeah, for your decisions making, etc. Yeah, and the fifth one is actually communication. How the leaderships want to communicate what they want the employee to do, for example, so effectively, yeah, efficiently and effectively, for example, yeah. So the leaderships must be effective in communicating their idea, yeah, to the people under them, for example. Yeah. So these five components: leaderships, involvement, learning, accountability, and communications can be given the abbreviation of LILAC, LILSC. Yeah. Now we look into what actually means with risk training and communications. Yeah. So in risk training and communications, training is actually a key and it is for everyone. Yeah, you need to be trained for you to be aware about the risk framework in your company, for example. Yeah, you're being trained on aware about the culture, about the risk aware culture, for example. Yeah, and what kind of training is needed for who, how it is delivered, cost, and training material. These are actually some of the pre-training questions. Yeah, that will be um, asked or being given in the training with regards to risk. Yeah, and to some extent, risk also be incorporated into the management systems. Yeah, such as the RMIS. Yeah, so the risk management information system, RMIS. Yeah. So just now we did mention earlier on that risk management is still a developing field. One of the reasons why it's a developing field because based on previous experience, for example, yeah, uh, we may come up with tools such as computer developing a software, computer software, for example, to predict what kind of risks will arise in the future for that particular business, for example, yeah, or how to minimize it, for example. Yeah, including, for example, to remind you when your fire insurance expires, for example, things like that. Yeah, that probably will lead all the way to other processes in the company. Yeah, and now that we're using software to monitor the company's activities. Yeah, so we can associate some of the balance, check and balance uh, in the procedures of that company when they're purchasing, when they're paying, for example, in their management information system. Yeah, so we include the risk factor, that's the risk management information system. So any questions? So this is the lecture on unit one, understanding risk management, where we start from the introduction to risk management, followed with the risk strategies. Any questions? No questions? So it's a brief lecture today, yeah, on understanding understanding risk management, where we covered the introductions to risk management as well as risk strategies. Yeah. Okay, I close this one. Perhaps now I can show to you the second slide. So I think most of you, I did advise you to read these notes on risk management on Friday. So only about 50 pages for you to read. So I hope that you did read these notes on risk management. Yeah, because the next thing actually we're going to look into this risk process. Yeah. Okay, you can see this. Unit 2, the risk management process. Okay, great. If you can see it, then I can start. Yeah. So there are two components in the risk management process. Yeah. We will cover the first one. We look into the components involved in the risk management process, and we will continue again on the risk management framework on Friday. Yeah. Let us see first actually the components involved in the risk management process. Yeah. So the components involved in the risk management process, um, actually we are looking into what it means with inherent, current, and residual risk. So what it actually mean with inherent? Yeah, the inherent level of risk is actually the original state of the identified risk where there are no controls in place yet to manage the risk. Yeah, so this is inherent. Yeah, there's a risk, there's the danger coming, and you don't have any control or you don't have any um, way to manage it. So it's called inherent. Yeah. So it can also be called the gross level of risk. Yeah. So by considering the inherent level of risk, organizations will be able to identify the impact of each individual control measure. Yeah. So the organization should put in place control measure to manage this inherent risk to current level of risk and finally to residual risk. Yeah. So in this case, the third type of risk, residual risk, actually the target level for the control measures. Yeah. So from inherent, which you do not have any control, to current, where you identify it, and then finally you put it as a residual risk when you can control it. Yeah. For example, for uh, fire risk, for example, yeah, to the property or to the building, for example, yeah. Um, if you did not buy any uh, uh, PPE, for example, personal protective equipment, yeah, including how to fight the fire when it's occurred, yeah, that's probably considered as inherent, yeah. But when you bought your company buy all the PPE, install the water sprinkler, for example, in the building, yeah, provide the fire hose, etc., for the bomber to come in and connect it to the main water supply, so they can use it to fight the fire, for example. Yeah, that is considered as the current risk. So you're aware about it. Yeah, you identify that uh, that particular risk with regards to fire. Then finally, you can also apply the residual risk. Yeah, when you uh, when you start to install all those things, as well as buying insurance to protect the property against fire, for example. Yeah, so they become residual. So in case of fire happen and damage the property, you can probably get the assistance from the insurance company to rebuild the factory or the damaged property to the conditions before the fire occurred, for example, before the incidents happened. Yeah, so that's become residual risk in this case. So in this case, we must have a way to do risk assessment. Yeah. So the overall process of risk identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluations is considered as a risk assessment process. Yeah. So the most important process, the risk management framework, uh, the risk assessment is the most important process of the risk management framework, where in a risk assessment, you will identify the risks, yeah? Risk identifications, where you will identify all risks, both external and internal sources. Yeah. Then you have a risk analysis, where in this case the risks are analyzed to determine the impact and likelihood. Yeah. So I did mention to you earlier on. In this course, engineering management course, we are particularly concerned about project risk to project management. Yeah. So in this case, we're talking about risk analysis here. That is to analyze and determine the impact and likelihood. Yeah. In a project management, probably we're talking about the risk with regards to um, you overrun the project, for example, instead of 1 year given to you, you are doing the project more than 1 year. Yeah. So for every month that you extend the project beyond its completion date, actually taking a risk of overstretch your resources, yeah, your money, uh, uh, rental of the equipment, etc. Yeah. So some project you're probably ending up paying penalty on that. Yeah. If you remember or you heard about the KLIA 2 project, for example. Yeah. But supposedly for low cost airline, right? Um, where they initially started with a 1 billion budget. Yeah. But then um, by the time it's ready, yeah, it's already delayed by a couple of years, and the budget being stretched from 1 billion to become 5 billion, 5 times more. Yeah. So there is a in this case probably the risk analysis not being applied to the project thoroughly. Yeah. Or there also the possibility of the design of the airport being changed while from the first design when the project being awarded to the um, developer, yeah, and the contractor. Yeah. Next will be the risk evaluations. Yeah. Resources or decisions on how to manage the risk are performed at this stage. Yeah. With regards to risk evaluations. So how you want to evaluate a risk, for example, with regards to the resources involved. Yeah. And finally, on decisions on how to manage this risk. Yeah. And come back to our um, the main objective of our lecture that is on um, decisions making. Yeah. So the components involved in the risk management process. Yeah. So actually it's referred to manual 2.1 and table 2.2 on the advantages and disadvantages of each method. Yeah. So actually there is you can see this in the PDF PowerPoint. I can end the show. Go back here. Which is this one here, this notes here. Can you see these notes? Unit 2, risk and process management on a risk management process. Yes, okay. Now I move down to look to find that table 2.1 and 2.2. Okay, here is table 2.1, techniques of risk assessment. Yeah. Um, so what are the techniques for risk assessment? So the first one actually we're talking about question A and checklist. Yeah. Where use of a structured question A and checklist to collect information that will assist with the recognition of the significant risks. Next will be workshops and brainstorming. We are talking about the collections and sharing of ideas at workshops to discuss the events that would impact the objectives, core processes, or key dependencies. The third one, inspections and audits. We're talking about the physical inspection of premises and activities and audits of compliance with established systems and procedures. And the fourth one, actually the flowcharts and dependency analysis. Here, talking about the analysis of the process and activities within the organizations to identify critical components that are key to success. Yeah, and something that probably familiar with you because we have learned this probably in process control systems with regards to heads-up and FMEA approaches. Yeah, so heads-up stands for hazard and operability studies, and failure modes and effect analysis. There is FMEA, which are qualitative technical failure analysis techniques. Yeah. Then we have the SWOT and Pestler analysis. SWOT, I hope you are very familiar with SWOT by now, which stands for strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. SWOT analysis. And Pestler, in this case, it's the political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental analysis, which offer structured approaches to risk identifications. So um, the six techniques in risk assessment. Yeah, starting with a question and checklist, workshops and brainstorming, inspections and audits, flow charts and dependency analysis, then the heads-up and FMEA approaches, and finally the SWOT and Pestler analysis. Yeah, so all the way until we also consider things like environmental, legal, and environmental also. Well, so what is the advantages and disadvantages? So for example, the questionnaire and checklist, advantages will be it has consistent structure, guarantees consistency, and greater involvement than in a workshops. The disadvantages will be senior management tend to dominate, and issue will be missed if the wrong people are involved. Yeah. In regards to workshops and brainstorming, the advantages will be it will consolidate opinions from all interested parties, as well as it will have greater interactions produces more ideas. But the disadvantages will be again the senior management tend to dominate, just like the questionnaire checklist is now, and some issues will be missed if the wrong people are involved. And with regards to flowchart and dependency analysis, advantages will be that it will be useful output that may be used elsewhere, and the analysis produces better understanding of the processes. But the disadvantages of a flowchart and dependency analysis will be difficult to use for strategic risk and may be very detailed and time consuming. If I ask you what type of flowchart and dependency analysis that you have used or come across, any idea? Any idea? Anyone want to give a try? You ever heard about fishbone diagram? Yeah, or fishbone diagram because of fish is also known as a Fishikawa diagram. Fishikawa. So the fish is still in front, but Fishikawa is a Japanese name. So Japanese like to eat fish. Yeah. So maybe later on you can Google it out. Fishikawa diagram, or also known as a fishbone diagram. So that is actually flowchart and dependency analysis. Yeah. Just in case um, I mean, most of people know it's a workshop, but flowchart, probably you start to think, what is actually flowchart? That's why actually when you do your project, we ask you to come up with your flowchart and your methodology. So that's one of the reason actually. Yeah. So your final year project is really, you also need to consider risk analysis in your final year project. Agree? Um, think heads up and FMEA approaches. Yeah. The advantages of it is structured approaches so that no risks are omitted, and involvement of a wide range of personnel. Yeah, for a heads-up study, for example, for a plant, for example, a consultant will come in. Yeah, and all the team in the plant will involve in the clinic or the retreat to come up with to identify the current process and how to improve on the process, for example. So that's what they do in HESOP and FMEA. Yeah. And the final one, the SWOT and PESO analysis. Yeah. Um, Advantages will be well-established techniques with proven results, and SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Yeah, can be linked to strategic decisions. Yeah? So now you can see the point why I covered this lecture on risk in very detail when I covered the topic on decisions making and strategic decisions. Yeah, so you can see the point there. Yeah, so there must be a framework and the process involved. So here we're talking about the process involved. Yeah? If you go back to the HAZOP and FMEA just now, the disadvantages of HAZOP and FMEA will be they are mostly easily applied to manufacturing activities only. Yeah, that's why I'm talking about the plant, could be a chemical plant, for example. Yeah, and they're also very analytical and time-consuming approaches. Yeah, so the consultant will be stay in the company or in the plant for 1 week to interview the employees, for example. Yeah, uh, from management all the way down to the technicians, etc. Yeah, to get the details so that they can propose a new way to do things, an improved way to do things, for example. Yeah. With regards to SWOT and PESO analysis, their disadvantages to be they are focused approaches and might miss some of the categories of risk, for example. Yeah, and they also quite rigid structure restricts imaginative thinking. Yeah, but sometimes when we are too worried about the threat, for example, you become less imaginative. So this is the advantages and disadvantages of risk assessment techniques. Yeah. So now I will close this one and go back to close this one. Uh, let's see. Okay. Um, okay. You can see here, right? Unit 2, the risk management process. You can see this slide. Yes. Okay. So I can continue where we stopped just now. Mhm. Here. Yeah. Okay. So 1 o'clock now. I think I can still give lecture until 1:15 maybe, because I don't want to make the video recording the size is too big that I cannot upload it in Elip. So I suggest that maybe you can take it for me and then you put it in YouTube. I can link it to YouTube. Yeah. So we have discussed table 2.1 and table 2.2 from the PDF notes, yeah, which I already upload in Elip, which you can download it later on. Yeah. So there are risk perceptions. What actually means with risk perceptions? Different people will have different views on risk. Yeah? That's why some of you doing final year project with different type of risk. Yeah. Some of you are very amateurish. Some of you take it do not want to take much risk. Yeah? Um, so different people will have different views on risk. Yeah? Whether you agree or not, you can reflect back how you choose your final year project, for example. Yeah? Including choosing your supervisor, for example. So some of you probably ending up choosing supervisor that already well known to be um, uh, help their students very well, and all of them getting A, for example. Yeah. Um, so some tools adopted to meet this challenge and is to have voting majorities, asking for feedback, etc. Yeah? So the tools being adopted to meet this challenge with regards to different view on risk, for example. Yeah. So how many times you are in a meeting, for example. Yeah. So in university, probably you're involved in student society, for example. How many times you have to take a vote, for example, to proceed or not to proceed with certain decisions, for example, yeah, including doing your project as well, on how you're supposed to present your project, for example, yeah. So the idea is to obtain consensus on how to manage the risk, yeah. So risk appetite in this case basically the amount of risk that an organization is willing to accept in the course of doing business. And some organizations will have a higher risk appetite or tolerance than others. And for low risk appetite, they tend to grow organically at a slower pace. But for high risk appetite, normally in business, they tend to grow in an aggressive manner, including merger and acquisitions, for example, M&A. Yeah? Next will be the risk capacity. Yeah? So the risk capacity deals with how much risk the organization should take or can afford to take, and the risk appetite of the board of directors should be within the risk capacity of the organizations. That's why I earlier on talking about what type of business that company or organization have. If they're in like unimas in higher education, the risk only will be nothing to do with venturing in risky business, for example, or invest the university saving in share market, for example. It's not the thing that you need to do, for example. Yeah. So the risk capacity of an organization will depend on the financial strength of the organizations, the robustness of its infrastructure, the strength of its reputations and brands, and the competitive nature of the marketplace in which the organization operates. Yeah? So you can think about Unimas in higher education, Proton in manufacturing, for example. So basically differences. Yeah? Okay, you get tired. Let me finish off the components involved in the risk management process. Then we can call it a day, and we can continue on Friday. Yeah. The next will be the risk exposure. Yeah. So different approaches are necessary for different types of risk, and hazard risk will need hazard tolerance strategy to control the risk. Yeah. So the control risk will require control acceptance, and the opportunity risk will lead to an investment appetite. And normally the risk exposure is the total risk that the organization has taken in all three risk categories. Yeah. With regards to risk magnitude focuses on the impact of an event should it occur. Yeah. So the risk likelihood and risk magnitude should be managed simultaneously and complementary rather than separately. Yeah. And risk magnitude is also known as the risk severity. Yeah. Then what it means with upside risk. Yeah. So the upside of risk is achieved when the benefits obtained from taking the risk are greater than any benefit that would have resulted from not taking it. Yeah. So the approach to upside of risk is essentially turning the solving of a problem into an opportunity instead of an incurred cost. Yeah. And the upside of risk enables a company to seize a business opportunity that a competitor would not have the appetite to undertake. We look into more detail what it means with upside of risk. So upside of risk normally we consider fewer disruptions to normal operations and greater operational efficiency, resulting in less downside of business of risk, and ability to seize an opportunity denied to competitors because a better informed view of the risk is taken. Third, deliberately identifying events that will be positive during the risk assessment and deciding how to manage those events. Fourth, opportunity management, whereby a detailed evaluation is undertaken of new business opportunities before deciding to take the opportunity. Yeah, and achieving a positive outcome from a situation that could have gone wrong without good judgment or risk management. Yeah, and achieving compliance or risk assurance in difficult circumstances as an unintended or automatic consequence of good risk management. Yeah. So this on the risk management process. The next actually the risk management framework in more details, but we will cover this on Friday. Okay. So I stop the recording.